Let us gather. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Meetinghouse of Provincetown. Welcome to those of you joining us on our live stream. And a special welcome to Cricket's son, Jim, who is here with us today, and to any other family members who might be watching online. We are here this afternoon to remember and memorialize a dear and generous life. We come together to say goodbye to Betty Comey, to Cricket. And today we are not walking alone in our grief and loss, we are bearing it together. But we have also gathered to celebrate a life. We have come together to give thanks that we knew this amazing woman, to express gratitude for the days and years we were able to spend with her. So many years, 100 of them. We are here to share the joy that Cricket brought into our lives and to celebrate her presence that remains with us even now as we hold up the memories that will remain with us always. I thank you for being here today. It is tradition in Unitarian Universalist churches to light a chalice at the beginning of each service, and so this afternoon I invite Cricket's friend and fellow bridge player Kitty to light our chalice for us. Today, may it represent the ongoing spirit of love and friendship that reaches across death. Thank you. I know that we ministers are not supposed to have favorites, but Cricket was my favorite. And I think you'll all forgive me because I think she was a favorite of yours too. I first met Cricket when I came to Provincetown on a snowy weekend in January of 2012 to interview secretly with a small group of UU Meetinghouse members who made up the ministerial search committee. I fell in love with Lorraine, Stan, Dan, background, her family, and her coming out story. Careful who takes your picture at a gay and lesbian march on Washington, by the way. You might just end up on the front page of the Boston Globe. I heard about her journey to Provincetown and making a new life here, deciding to be her full self, going back to the name Cricket that her mom had called her as a child. My wife Lisa was here for that interview weekend, and she fell in love with Cricket too. On our ride home, she asked me, "Do you think we'll be as cool as Cricket when we're her age?" I thought about it for a minute and said, well, we'd better start being a lot cooler now if we want to be. And although it's been our goal, I'm not sure we've quite succeeded at being as cool as 88-year-old Cricket. Thankfully, that search committee chose me, and I moved here to become your minister, and my getting to know Cricket continued. Some of this happened over a mean game of ping pong. She beat me every time. Some of it happened on our walks around Beach Forest, or picnic lunches in the car when it was too windy and cold to eat outside. Cricket always made me laugh. Her sense of humor was epic. Once I brought her to the pharmacy to get a shingles vaccine, and when the pharmacist asked which arm she wanted the shot in, without missing a beat, she pointed at me and said, "Hers." When she moved to Seashore Point, I began visiting her there, and she continued to share her stories. She told me about her grade school friend, Marjorie Shifter, and how they would sit on the playground trying to imagine old age. They tossed around the question, is it better to be blind or to be deaf? She didn't know then that she would gradually experience both. She talked about Helen Jordan, the Girl Scout troop leader who helped to plan a cross-country bicycle trip that Cricket took part in, well before women were allowed to do such things. Yes, you can, Mrs. Jordan used to tell them. And it was a mantra that stuck with Cricket for the rest of her life. She reminisced about raising a family in Acton and the beautiful old house and property there that she still considered home when she thought about the concept of home. The memory of a cardinal sitting in an apple tree in spring, the contrast of colors, stayed with her as a gift. She told me about her sons and their families. She was so proud of you. And she gushed a lot about Sue Comey, too, an exceptional daughter-in-law who made sure she had everything she needed, even from afar. Everyone should have a Sue, she said. But I have to say, her most treasured role in life was as a grandmother. She liked being the funny kind of grandma who sat on the floor and played games with her grandkids when they were little. And she adored visits with them in Provincetown as they grew older. She took so much pride in her sons and grandkids and what good and kind people they are. I bet you had a little something to do with that, I would tell her, but she would just shake her head. I was blessed. She told me about living as a caretaker at a scout camp, being a nature guide at a sort of spa in Mexico, living in a women's community in Arizona, kayaking all over the Cape with her partner, Linton, who at this point lived down the hall. Like I said, I'm gonna have to start being a lot cooler now, if I ever hope to be as cool as she was. And Cricket always checked in about what was going on in my life too. Lisa would visit her as well, and they had a lovely bond. Occasionally, we'd take her out for adventures, like a beach concert at Herring Cove. Cricket loved Zoe Lewis, the musician Zoe Lewis. What she remembers most about the concert, though, was the fathers dancing with their children. She was so moved by that. Several times I brought Zoe to Cricket's apartment to sing to her in her own private concerts. She adored them, and so did her live-in caretakers, Toomey and Victoria especially. They were special women who I am grateful to. As Cricket began to lose her hearing and her sight, we stopped going on adventures together. Our visits became quieter. I would read to her from a book written by Ilona Royce Smithkin, who lived to 101 here in Provincetown and wrote in her 90s about aging and how you had to shift your life, allow it to get smaller, but still find the joy around you in the moments, like how the light hits a vase of flowers at a certain time of day. It reminded Cricket of that cardinal in the apple tree. When hearing became more difficult, I focused on the other senses that she could still experience joy through. In spring, I brought lilacs and lilies of the valley for her to smell. "I'll take another sniff before you leave," she said. In summer, I introduced her to cardamom ice cream, which she loved. In the fall, I brought her a chestnut from the front yard of the Meetinghouse so she could feel its smoothness in her hand. By winter, I would just put my hand in hers and sit next to her, and that seemed to be enough. She still had a sense of humor, though. On my second to last visit, when she was no longer talking. I came in from outside, and I put my cold hand in hers, and she said with her eyes closed, "Ooh-wee!" On my last visit, she did not speak or react to my hand, and I knew that this was the end. I had been dreading this, but it didn't make me as sad as I thought it would, because I knew she was ready to go. She had told me many times. She did not fear death. There was nothing left undone. Anna was with her then, such a gentle spirit to guide her to the end. And instead of praying for her to stay, I prayed for her to go, to be at peace, to be free. And so she is. And I will miss her. I now invite Reverend Kat Black to share our first reading and some remembrances.
Good afternoon. I'm going to read from the Book of Joy, an interview with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu with Douglas Abrams about our greatest joy. The interviewer asks or says, "The joy that you are talking about is not just a feeling. It's not something that just comes and goes. It's something much more profound. And it sounds like what you're saying is that joy is a way of approaching the world. Many people are waiting for happiness or joy when they get a job, when they fall in love, when they get rich. Then they'll be happy. Then they will have joy. You are talking about something that is available right now without waiting for anything." Archbishop Tutu responds, "I mean simply to say that ultimately our greatest joy is when we seek to do good for others. It's how we are made. I mean, we're wired to be compassionate. Discovering more joy does not, I'm sorry to say, save us from the inevitability of hardship and heartbreak. In fact, we may cry more easily. We will laugh more easily, too. Perhaps we are just more alive. Yet as we discover more joy, we can face suffering in a way that ennobles rather than embitters. We have hardship without becoming hard. We have heartbreak without being broken." For me, cricket embodied joy. When I asked Cricket to what she attributed her longevity, she answered, "I kept moving. I kept moving." In fact, until the last week of her life, she did just that. In the fall of 2020, when she was 97, I began my journey with Cricket. My husband Chris and I had enrolled in the Chaplaincy Institute of Maine in order to become interfaith chaplains. 300 hours of volunteer work over 2 years was a requirement. When I met with Reverend Kate to talk about ideas for volunteering, she suggested pastoral care visits with Cricket. Of course, I said yes. I knew Cricket from church, as well as from the many times I had driven her to medical appointments in Hyannis, where we had lots of time for her to tell her stories. Thus began a more than 3-year friendship that I will always treasure. Our weekly visits usually included walking around Seashore Point, or when the weather wasn't great, walking the halls. Sometimes we would go to the fitness room, and she would ride the stationary bike while I walked on the treadmill. At first, I thought I should come up with ways to entertain her, but I quickly realized that we could just hang out. Her macular degeneration meant that she couldn't see well enough to read, so I would help her with her mail. We would separate out the junk mail together, and she had this certain place for putting the recycling, and then I would read any cards or letters that had come in and read aloud to her, and also send any bills to daughter-in-law Sue, who would take care of those. When she needed a ride, I was one of her primary drivers, as well as her friend Bob and a few others, maybe some of you. Cricket's humor and humility are what I most admired about her. I'll never forget her comments at her 100th birthday party. She stood up and thanked everyone for coming, and then said, "If I had any idea where I was, I would leave." So everybody kind of said, "No, we're not telling you. You don't get to leave." But I do want to say that that humor stayed with her till the very end. I got to visit with her, must have been about a week and a half before she passed. And she was sleeping most of the time, but her caregiver said I could see if she wanted to wake up, and she did. And she knew me, of course. She knew me by my voice, as opposed to, because you couldn't see very well, of course. So I was talking to her and telling her she had nothing to worry about, and that she wasn't going to die. It was just her body that was wearing out. And she sort of looked up and said, "You're about as wacky as I am." Anyway, I couldn't believe how she could keep that beautiful sense of humor. But anyway, I think most of us who knew her knew that she was very modest about her gifts. At one point, I asked her if she would let me write up some of her life stories, which I found so compelling. And she said, "Let me think about that," which was her way of saying, "No, I don't think so." I later learned that her father had impressed upon her, at a very young age, that it was not okay to boast about your accomplishments. It made me sad when she told me that one day she came home from school proud that her band teacher had praised her. Her dad told her, "Empty cans make the most noise." And I had never heard that expression before. When I looked it up, I found that it means those with the least knowledge and talent often speak the loudest and the most. And I thought to myself, well, Cricket certainly was not an empty can and had so much talent and knowledge. When I discovered a method for sharing one's legacy for future generations through what used to be called an ethical will, but is also called a legacy letter, I told her about it and explained that it was more about your life lessons and values that you would like to share with family and friends and what you wish for them. The idea appealed to her, and thus the project I called Going on 100 was born. I know some of you have a copy of this little booklet. If you didn't get a chance to see it, let me know. I can send you a digital copy. Besides joy, Cricket embodied gratitude. I never left her presence without hearing, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." She was so grateful also for being able to live in Provincetown. And when I asked her what she wished for her grandchildren, she said, "May you have a Provincetown in your life." Thank you, Cricket. Thank you for enriching my life and providing a role model I can only hope to emulate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kat. And I invite Betty's son, Jim, to share his reflection.
Thank you all for coming. So great to be here, and so glad that the timing of this worked out for me. And I want to thank Kate and Kat especially for organizing this. And I'm here today because I want to be more present for my mom's passing, and more than that, to see her reflected back to me in all your faces and the things you say and the way you show up, and that means so much. And I also wanted to show what her passing means to me and what it's taught me. And I'm not going to talk a lot about her life. I think I can already tell from the remarks made before you, that's covered. There's nothing more that I can share. This is the same thing I saw growing up with her. Except I'll say I never doubted for a minute that I was unconditionally loved. So I don't think everyone can say that. So that's a good kind of bedrock to have as you go through your life. So what some of you know, but probably many of you don't, and my partner Barb passed just 10 days after my mom. And the two are very intertwined, and I can't really separate them out, and I don't really think I need to. But I think there's lessons here for me, and by extension, for everybody. I shared a little of this over dinner last night, and I was encouraged to bring it up today, so that's what I'm going to do. So, am I sad with the passing of Barb and my mom? Yeah, you better believe it. Do I feel a sense of loss profoundly? Am I missing them? Oh yeah. But is it crushing? Not at all. It's actually joyful in some ways on both accounts. So here's the two prominent women in my life, other than my two daughters, kind of on similar paths. My partner was diagnosed with ALS about a little over 2 years ago. And it's Lou Gehrig's disease in what happens is the sensory neurons are fine, but the motor neurons, the things that control your muscles and all those parts of your body, start slowly to degenerate, and you lose functions. And it could start in your limbs. It could start, in her case, it's called bulbar onset, which means her mouth and throat and so forth. So here's how they're similar. What I see is this gradual decline physically, but there's no real pain. There's no dementia. And that's exactly what I saw in my mom and in Barb at the same time. So what did I realize like that? Well, as things left, in my mom's case, sight and hearing, in Barb's case, speech and swallowing and other things like that, profound things that we depend on day to day, that as these capabilities drop away, something is left. That something included an uncovering of what I think was sacred or divine about both of them. Was it frustrating? Yes. Was it upsetting at times? Yes. Was there loss again? Yes. But what I found is that every step along the way, more was gained than was lost. There was more closeness, it was more satisfying, more love, and more appreciation. And deeper truths get revealed, and those are amazingly joyful. And people would come up to me in the store and on the town and say, "Oh, it's terrible what you're going through." And I'd have to say, "Well, not at all. It's challenging in some ways, but in some ways we've never been happier." And I could truthfully say that. And I could feel the same thing with my mom coming on visits and in my phone calls. So my mom passed, And 3 days later, Barb, whose trajectory led me to believe she probably had 3, 4, 5 more months left, suddenly crashed. And it was clear within about 12 to 24 hours that she was on her way out, just like the reports I had gotten from here about my mom. The body's shutting down, things aren't happening that should be happening, getting more inward, losing the ability to communicate. Same thing, except I had a pre-taste. But here's what gets to be the amazing part about Barb, and I'll tie this in to my mom in a minute. In those last days, as she lost all strength, and she had lost the speech over a year before that, but she couldn't even communicate yes or no very easily. She was that weak. So on the last day, we didn't know it was the last day at the time. When I say we, I meant her 2 daughters who had come into town to be with her and were in the house with me, and her oldest granddaughter. We were all 4 there, and she was depending on a BiPAP machine to keep her alive. It helps supplement breathing, and without it, she probably couldn't do it. So it was coming off here and there for a minute or two just so she could get wet her mouth, basically. It wasn't enough water to sustain anybody. And then all of a sudden, she made it clear that she didn't want this mask back on. And we all knew what that meant. So we gathered, all of us holding her, and just waited. And within about 10 minutes, she was gone. But here's the amazing part. After a few minutes of being with her like that, I placed my hand on her heart, and it was beating wildly. I had some sense at that point of something divine, something sacred coming in. I couldn't say what it was. And I decided to silently do a prayer that we had done together, and then there's a little chant that goes along with it. And within a few seconds, it was like suddenly, I would call it felt like an avalanche just coming in and overtaking any resistance, fear, lack of acceptance. It just said, it's happening. And she passed just like that. We were warned that a person's last breaths can be really difficult to watch in such a situation. There was none of that. No agitation, completely peaceful, which is just as what I had heard about my mom. So this was, even though I was with Barb, I was going through my mom's passing at the same time. And what was left was just, people, you hear stories about near-death experiences and people move into this light, or Jesus comes, or there's some miraculous presence there, and it's all-knowing, it's all peace, it's love, it's compassion, it's all-encompassing. And by some miracle, me being beside her and holding on to her that way, it overtook me too. And I got to see and feel firsthand what the passing really meant, and that it was joyful. It was amazing. There was no pain. There was no fear. There was no agitation. I could feel us both embracing it, even though she was the one passing. So this is how I feel like my mom's passing and Barb's are connected. I feel they went to the same place. Not only that, we all come from the same place, and we're all going to the same place. And we can know that intellectually, but what a gift it is to actually directly perceive it. So I think of this as, it's always there. It just gets overshadowed. So most of us don't see it until those last moments. It's kind of like, probably other people have used this metaphor, it's when you picture a sun or a moon hanging low over the water, and you don't look at the sun or the moon, but you look at the reflections in that water, and they're kind of shimmering. That's what we see in our life here on earth. Those reflections are that's what the joy and the wonder and the love and those positive experiences that we have in our life. They're reflecting of that wholeness that we may not see directly at the time. So I'm just tremendously grateful to have had both of them in my life and to understand what their being here meant and what their going on from this world means. And I hope that's useful and of help to everyone here. It's staying with me. I have a lot of sadness and a lot of missing, but I don't have a shred of, oh, poor mom, oh, poor Barb, or, they've what's happened to them? I know what's happened to them, and it's great. So I appreciate the time to come here and share this and see all of you, and thank you for coming out today. And bravo! It is a celebration. Thanks.
Thank you. I now invite Cricket's longtime friend, Pastor Brenda Haywood, to offer a reflection.
Dear Comey families, friends, members, and all of Cricket's beloved Meetinghouse and beyond. Today I share with you in remembrance and celebration the remarkable life and journey of Betty Cricket Comey, a life well lived as she celebrated 100 years. As we acknowledge the impact of her life and emotions of our loss, may we hold on to fond memories of her life. A truly remarkable woman, and find comfort in our shared memories. Today, and in the days that follow, for Cricket embraced life with love, with family, and with friendships. As we honor a remarkable Cricket, I like to share these thoughts by Helen Keller. What we once enjoyed and deeply loved, we never lose. For all that we love deeply becomes a part of us. Betty Cricket, you touched our lives in countless beautiful ways today and many days. We come together to honor and celebrate your life and journey. Dear family and friends, it's been difficult for me to review just a few reflections of our remarkable friendship, for we shared over 35 years of friendship that included Cricket's family and many of her personal friends. Dear Cricket, today I celebrate you and your family, for they are deeply a part of my remembrance of you, a woman who embraced life with love, family, laughter, and peace. Oh, there are just so many fond memories that Cricket and I shared. One of the many fond memories includes our wonderful walks through Beech Forest in Provincetown with our dogs, and often without any conversation to disturb the silence and beauty of nature. However, from time to time, that silence was broken with a call from a passing bird, and Cricket would get out her book and record this. I was always amazed with Cricket how she could name the birds. And in our reflections and knowledge of this peaceful place, especially the call of so many different birds and the beauty of nature, our friendship was incredible. And she introduced me to her 4 boys and their children. And I felt like I had become a part of that family. So whenever the boys came home, Cricket would invite me over to hang out and have a beer with them. Dear friends, I hope in the days that follow, you'll continue to share Cricket's remarkable life and journey and celebrate a life well lived, a life well loved. Go in peace, Miss Cricket. We'll meet again.
And now I invite Bob Sellers forward to offer a few words. You are always so good to Cricket, and I loved any time our visits overlapped.
As you can see, I have nothing to read. Cricket was a great friend. We spent many, many hours on the road. And in case you don't know, I was the driver for Seashore Point. So everywhere that she needed to go, I was there. I'm the one that reminded her she needed to go to a cardiologist. I'm the one that reminded her we need to go to the dentist. All of her appointments I knew, and I always stayed ahead of her. Well, where are we going this week? Well, I heard you were supposed to be here. Oh, yeah, you're right, Bob. And we would spend many, many hours in the vehicle, just talking. You know, we shared our lives together, our stories. She was a wonderful lady. She knew as much about my family as I knew about hers. I became very close with the family, the boys, and their children. And it was she let me in her life, which was absolutely amazing. I was able to talk to her all the time. I could tell you I could sit here for 3 hours and tell you stories about us driving up and down Route 6 without an exaggeration. All the conversations we had, it was unbelievable. When we first met, there would be no politics. There would be no religion. We wouldn't talk about any of that. By the time 5 years had passed, there was nothing that was untouchable. We spoke about everything. You know, my wife, who's Deborah, she's here also, got to the point where she was baking for him and cooking for him, and she was just so grateful. It was just, you know, Deborah makes a great lasagna. That was her favorite, by far, was Deborah's lasagna. I will tell you one story, though, that meant so much. She needed to go to Hyannis, and she said, Bob, I need you to come to my place first. I said, okay. So right there at the door is her clarinet and a saxophone. Now, Betty loved her music. I mean, they even had a little trio that played at Seashore Point during the Friday night parties. But anyways, I brought them downstairs, and Betty was quiet. And I said, Pet, what's the matter? She says, we're going to go and we're going to sell these. And I could see that it was killing her. So I said, you know, you don't have to do this. She says, I can't use them anymore. She says, it's time for me to hand them to somebody else. Hopefully there'll be a young girl or a young man who will get these, and they'll be able to enjoy life like I have. And I said, Bet, you don't need to do this. Well, I have to downsize. I said, no, you don't. And she says, yes, I do. She said, I really want somebody else to enjoy it the way I have. So the closer we got to the store, we had a discussion, and I says, well, how much are you looking to get for these? She says, I don't know, whatever they're going to give me. I said, never tell anybody that. I said, go in with a price, and we'll stand by the price. Well, I can't do that. I said, sure you can. Just tell them what you want. I said, how much? She says, well, if I send $250 to my grandchildren, that'd be great. I said, okay, fine. So we go walking in there, and the gentleman looked over the stuff, and we told him that, she was retiring and that she had been into music for many, many years, and that we were trying to sell them, and hopefully they'd get into the hands of some children or somebody that was just starting. And he says, oh, that's awfully nice of you. So he says, let me take in the back and look at them and see, and I'll come back and give you a price. He gives her a price, actually, of $125. And I looked at him and I said, Bet, what do you think? She says, I think they're worth a little bit more. So, anyways, I went to the back of the room with the gentleman and I said, look, I said, this is this woman's life. It's breaking her heart. And mine, to do this. And I said, you really, really need to get closer to that number, just to make me feel good, if nothing else. And I says, I got to be able to do something for you to make this happen. He says he just did. He says he really twisted my arm. So he came back and he gave her a price of $225, and Betty said, okay, we'll do the deal. So we left the stuff there, and she got, $225 in cash. And we're walking out the door, and she says, Bob, what'd you do? I said, I gave him an offer I can't refuse. And she says, you are the best at doing this. Every time she went to buy something, she took me with her, because otherwise, she'd pay twice as much for it than what she needed to pay. And anyways, on the way home, she was very quiet. And she finally said, on halfway back, she says, I think we did the right thing. I says, I didn't do anything. You did it. I says, they were yours. You're the ones that enjoyed it all these years. I said, they meant a lot to you. And I said, it means a lot to whoever gets them that they know your story. And this gentleman will tell them that. She said, good, that's what I want to know. Can we go down Route 6A so I can go to the beach? I said, sure, why not? And that's what we did. And by the end of the day, she was laughing. We were enjoying ourselves. It was all over. But how she felt about people and tried to help them is absolutely amazing. And she got it back tenfold. There's no question about it. Everybody here, Kate, Kat, everybody who knew her spent time with her and made her life as happy as we could towards the end. The last time I spoke with her, I had not been there for about 3 or 4 weeks because I myself had been in the hospital. And I don't know, I think it was you, Kat. Were you there? Yeah. And Kat says, well, she's still awake. And she spoke with me. And she says, where have you been, Bob? So I heard you were in the hospital. I said, yeah. She said, well, Kat told me you were in the hospital. I said, yeah, I was in the hospital, but I'm okay now. She says, well, I'm glad to hear it. She says, you're going to be around for a while. I can't let you go yet. And I believe that was the last time I was able to speak with her. And it really meant a lot to me. She was a great lady. And she will be much missed. Thank you.
I knew Betty since the early 1990s. I was the director of the Lower Cape concert band, and she played clarinet and saxophone, and she was a delight. We made music for over 30 years. Brenda was in the band, Brianna, and we even did concerts here once a year for 2 or 3 Julys at midnight called Transformation, which was drummers and singers, a theremin player that I found in Boston, and Betty. She was the beginning of teaching me really about music without borders. And so we knew each other first as musicians and then as friends, which as I go on in life increasingly becomes the same thing. This is for Betty. Cathedral bells were tolling, and our hearts sang on. Was it the spell of Paris or the April dawn? Who knows if we shall meet again? But when the morning chimes ring sweet again, I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through. In that small cafe, the park across the way, the children's carousel, the chestnut tree, the wishing well. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's light and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you.
Thank you. Each of you are here to offer thanks for Cricket's life and to let go of her body while holding on to her memory. She loved this community deeply, and I know you have many stories of her. If you are moved to do so, we invite you to come forward and share just a few words about Cricket.
I feel very privileged to be in this group of people that Cricket loved. And too close?
No, hold it closer.
Closer, okay. I have a deep voice and, I'm afraid of doing that. But anyhow, Cricket was really a great person. I knew her through the UU, and one day it just occurred to me, we were looking for bridge players. I said to her, "Do you play bridge?" And she said, "Yes." And I thought, "Oh, fabulous, we have somebody else," because you're always looking for 4 people, and if you have 2 tables, you need 8 people. So Cricket joined our little group, and She was great. She was a great player. She was not afraid to bid. And people, bridge is very intimidating to a lot of people. But she was good. She was very, and it was heartbreaking, really, when she couldn't see the cards. And I kept thinking, can't we get some kind of glasses for her, like the surgeons wear? And there wasn't really any way to deal with it. But let me and she joined our group, and she joined the group in its extracurricular activities. She'd come out to dinner with us, and she'd have a nice drink. She was a joiner, a doer. And I remember, as people got to know Cricket, I'm going to tell a story about you, Chris. We were at a Christmas party for our little bridge group, and Chris was learning about cricket, and I heard Chris say, "Oh, isn't this wonderful to be in a group where I can meet somebody as wonderful and interesting as Cricket?" And she was. She just was. It was just such a pleasure to know her. I remember one time I was supposed to pick her up for a party. It was a graduation party, for a young person who I knew the grandparents. And I forgot to pick her up. And then they said, "Where's Cricket?" And I said, "Oh my God." So I rushed and I got her, and she came right away. And then right out on the porch there of this party were Jell-O shots. And don't you know, Cricket took a couple of Jell-O shots? She was great. She was game. So the message from Cricket is, go for it. Keep moving. Love life. Thank you, Cricket. You really were a model for all of us.
Good afternoon. My name is Rev. Christopher Vasquez. Ellen Anthony couldn't be here today to contribute. 30 years ago, I played with Cricket in the Lower Cape concert band, but only recently I got to know her again. I began visiting Cricket last year, sometimes reading to her about her own life. Black Cat had interviewed Cricket and made a wonderful book of memories with photos. The stories sparked more stories from Cricket, and she'd just go. One day, she even played the harmonica. More often, we'd just sit quietly, holding hands. That sweetness was her gift. Thank you for our time together, Cricket. And thank you to her caregivers, Victoria, Margaret, and Anna, and others who genuinely cared.
Thank you, Chris, and for sharing Ellen's words.
Well, I'm going back a little ways. Going back to 1995 when I first met Cricket, and I first came to the Cape. And we used to have Friday night parties down there in A.B. Hall with Brenda, and we'd have balloons and we'd have everything. And Cricket would come in with her boots on, and she would do line dancing. And I thought, wow, that little thing is going to do line dancing. Okay. Anyway, she did some line dancing, and then she looked at me and she says, "Get up here." I said, "Oh, no." Anyway, she brought me up there, and we started, and I said, "Cricket, I have 2 left feet." And she said, "Oh, no, everybody can dance, everybody." After a little while, she said, "Lawrence, you're right, you have 2 left feet." Go sit down. Leaping a little further forward, I used to, at her 90th birthday, no one was doing anything, so I said, Cricket, I'm having a 90th birthday party for you at my house. And I don't know if anybody who was here was there. You were? Okay. And we enjoyed, we reminisced about that. And then when she couldn't see too well, and she could hear still a little bit, but she used to sit over in that pew, and I'd sit right in my pew. Anyway, I'd go over and I thought, how am I going to know, how's she going to know who I am? And so I went over and I did the Eskimo hello. We rubbed noses. And from then on, she said, oh, Lawrence, it's you. I said, yeah, it's me. And so from then on, anytime she was here or we rubbed noses, and when I visited her at Seashore Point, we would rub noses. And the last time she says, Lawrence, keep rubbing my nose. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Ireland, and I did not know Cricket until the last 20 months of her life. As I was nearing my 50th year of being a medical caregiver of sorts, I would go a couple times a week, and then a lot every day near the end. Not every day, but almost every day. And it took me such a long time to have her figure out who I was and why I was there. She'd say, are you the hospice nurse? And I'd say, no, Cricket, I'm Sarah. I'm a nurse. I'm not a hospice nurse. So finally, after about a week, she said, so who are you again? And I said, I'm here because you didn't die, okay, Betty? I'm here because you didn't die. They kicked you off a hospice. You didn't die. I'm here now. Oh, okay. And then the next time I went in, she said, oh, you're here because I didn't die. That's why I'm here. But, you know, the relationship we had and it's been mentioned a few times. By the way, I'm glad to know where that chestnut came from. I knew it was from here, but now I know the rest of the story. But you know, as time went on, we talked a lot about, you know, our fathers, the men we chose to marry and have children with and leave behind for our lives in Provincetown eventually, and just the similarities that we had. And you know, as things failed and Betty got readmitted to hospice, I think in October, and she was definitely failing. I was kind of worried I might want to discharge her again, but you know, that was proven not to be the case. And oh boy, this is emotional. I will say that the last words that I know that Betty ever said in her life were it's been brought up here today. She said things 3 times. And what she said was, I love you, I love you, I love you. Probably 2 days before she died. And, you know, I always want to take that with me, the genuine kindness of this woman and just the effect she's had on me. So, thanks.
So Cricket was kind of a clarinet mentor for me, and I'm not sure how this fits into the chronology that Bob's story of selling the clarinet and saxophone, but this was after I'd moved away from Provincetown and I was back, and she was living at Seashore Point, and I went to visit her, or maybe I'd called, and she said, "Come over, I have something to give you." She presented me with this big box full of clarinet music going back many decades. One of the items in it that I still use is an exercise book written by Artie Shaw. And, Artie Shaw's clarinet method, the price was $2. It was published in 1941, and it had Betty W. on the cover. Anyway, she said, I've got to get rid of all this music because my fingers are too stiff to play anymore. So I want you to have it. And then, she was feeling kind of sad, clearly, about not being able to play. But then, as I was getting ready to leave, she picked up a harmonica and she said, "But I can still do this." So, thank you.
Hi, my name's Stan Hudson. I was the chair of the search committee for finding our good Reverend Kate. And Cricket was a member of that committee, as was Lorraine, and a few others that Kate has already mentioned. If you have the members misbehaving, talking behind each other's back, and violating confidences. Our committee was not that. And finally got down to our top candidates. We would have a group discussion with them by a conference call. Back in the day, we weren't using Zoom. It would put the spider-looking conference phone in the middle of the table and sit around and grill folks. And we did this with a number of our candidates. And indeed, we had this conversation with Kate. And when we were done, we were going out of the meeting, Cricket pulled me aside and said, "We've found our minister." And she was right. It showed her wisdom and her collaboration with the group, and her enthusiasm for the prospect of finding somebody that would be appropriate and important for this meeting house. And we were really glad that she was part of that process. She added so much. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Shar Priolo. Cricket, a friend of mine from back in the 90s, back to the days of the Lower Cape Concert Band. Johnny was one of the conductors. The family that I was part of, all of the members were in that band as well. And I used to hang out and listen to the band and go to their concerts. And in the breaks sometime, I would find my way over next to Cricket, because she was always fun to talk with. And by the way, she, next to Bill Clark, was my other favorite jitterbug partner. Heck of a saxophonist. Yeah, she could play that saxophone and as well the clarinet and yeah, the harmonica. We sang together. We used to do just impromptu duets together with one of us grabbing a harmony. But let's see, it was either the end of December of last year or the beginning of January, and Kate before one of her sermons, said that she had visited Cricket and that the time might be coming close. And I was then and still am just working 3 days a week. My days are Monday, Friday, Saturday. And so a Friday came up maybe 2 weeks later or so. And I said, I'm feeling like I need to go visit Cricket. And Kate said that they had sung together. So I figured, well, what the heck. So I still had her number in my phone. I called it, and I got Sarah, the nurse that was there, that just spoke a little bit ago. And Sarah was so kind. She said, well, do you know Cricket? And I said, yeah, back to the 90s. She goes, come, please come. So I did, and Cricket wasn't speaking at this point in time, and Sarah was moving her every half hour so that bed sores would not happen. And she says, I have her all ready for your visit. She's on her back, looking forward. And I just thought, how nice, that she did all this. And so I put my face down next to Cricket's better ear, left one, and I said, Cricket, it's Shar. And her eyes weren't open, but you could see the eyeball movement under the lid. And so I figured she heard me. And I said, I want to sing with you. And so I sang. I chose to sing You Are My Sunshine first, and then I sang Deep in the Heart of Texas, but instead of clapping, I just said boom, 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 boom. And then I sang what John and Mary just sang, I'll Be Seeing You. But the first one was You Are My Sunshine, and I sang it up close to her so she could hear it. Oh, and Sarah then put her hearing aids in. And there was, no movement except you can see eyeball movement. And I said, after I sang it, I said, well, how was that? And I said, okay. So I forgot the second verse, and I was a little flat. And her mouth goes. It's just like, yeah, right. I heard it. So. You might notice on the order of service that her last day was January 12th. This was January 12th that I was there. And after I finished my little concert, I gave her a peck on each cheek, and I said, I'll be seeing you. And I left. And Kate said that they sang together. And they enjoyed each other, and it was fun. Well, I sang to Cricket, and she died. 1 hour later, but it kind of felt very special to me. And Cricket is music to me.
Thank you, Shar. Thank you for sharing all those remembrances. When I met with Cricket years ago, many years ago, to plan her memorial service, I do that with people. You're all invited. She had a few requests. No organ music, please, she said. But then, worried that she might be making a fuss, she said, but even that would be fine. Cricket never liked to make a fuss. She wanted the choir to sing in this very room. It was her favorite, and I thank you to our singers today. And she wanted the congregation to sing Amazing Grace. She also wanted me to read a poem by Amelia Earhart. One of the things that I thought would come up today but didn't was her fascination with flying. But I think it connected with her even beyond that flying piece because it speaks in general about living a courageous life. And there's no doubt that Cricket did that. So now, to end, I'd like to honor Cricket's wishes by offering Amelia Earhart's poem, Courage, and then inviting you to sing Amazing Grace. And the words of the song are printed in your order of service. Courage by Amelia Earhart. Courage is the price that life exacts for granting peace. The soul that knows it not knows no release from little things, knows not the livid loneliness of fear, nor mountain heights where bitter joy can hear the sound of wings. How can life grant us boon of living, compensate for dull gray ugliness and pregnant hate, unless we dare the soul's dominion? Each time we make a choice, we pay with courage to behold the resistless day and count it fair. We cherish the memory of Cricket's words and deeds and character, carrying her in our hearts. Let us go now from this place in comfort and in peace, assured that even in this time of loss and sorrow, life remains precious and good. May we also on this day rekindle in our hearts an appreciation for the gifts and life of all of our family and friends. As you return to the routines of your lives, may you count this day fair, and may an abiding peace go with you.